Hey authors, welcome to Author Nation. I am Melody Ann, and in this video I want to talk about parallel narrative. Type of narrative you can use when writing your stories, whether it's a story within your nonfiction book or whether you're writing a memoir. Parallel narrative can be a really interesting way to bring different points of view or different places and times together. And what that is, in other words, is a parallel narrative has more than one storyline. So there are two storylines going together, and they're tied together with an event or a time or a character or a theme or something ties them together, but they're being told in parallel. And eventually, at the end, you do need to interweave them together and tie them together for your readers. But when you start out, they can feel quite separate. We can be like, why are there two different stories? And as they go, there's like, oh, I see how they might connect. I see how they might connect. I see how they might connect until they are together. If that makes sense, I hope it does. The most common parallel narrative is to have two characters telling the same story from different points of view, but that doesn't have to be that way. You could have, for example, if you're doing a family history, you could have different generations telling a story, and you could actually have different generations telling a story in different times, but that all lead up to the same place. So the grandmother's telling her story and the mother's telling her story. And where the grandmother's story kind of leaves off, the mother's story starts, and then you can have the next generation's story. So you could weave a story that way as well. So it doesn't have to be just two different points of view. It could be different points of view in different times or in different places, different worlds. That works well. It's an unusual structure for a nonfiction book, for a memoir, but it can be really useful if in your memoir you do have two different points of view or two different places and times or generations. That can work really, really well if you want to use a parallel structure or parallel narrative for those. And why use it? Well, if you have a parallel narrative with two opposing views, that can create tension. The reader knows, oh, these guys are, at some point going to come to a head, and there's going to be some tension around that. And that can be interesting for the reader to wonder, like, when is this going to happen? When is this event going to happen when they do manage to get together and share that information? It can also be really interesting because readers can have information about characters that characters don't have. So character A can give some information that character B doesn't have, but the reader has it. So the reader can be a little bit more omniscient than the individual characters in the book, and that can be an interesting experience for the reader. And of course, if you're going to choose this narrative structure, know why you're doing it. Don't do it because, well, I just don't want to do chronological. I want to do something interesting, so I don't know, I'll do parallel. Don't do it for that reason. Have a really good reason for using a parallel structure and know why you're using it and how you're going to weave it together. And of course, make sure it's clear. Make sure it's clear. If you're doing two characters, you want to, like, this chapter is Mary, and this chapter is Bob, and this chapter is Mary, and this chapter is Bob. So your reader knows where they are in place and time, whose point of view they're getting. So make it through chapters or, again, through a line or some asterisks, or something that separates the different points of view. It doesn't have to be. You can have the same point of view in a chapter as long as it's clear to the reader that you are separating them and that's two different characters. The narrator has changed. Also, pay attention to character development. If you are jumping back and forth in time and place, be aware that the character development still has to be logical even though you're jumping around. So make sure that you give the right information at the right time, which means doing some planning, getting that story organized beforehand and understanding like where you're going to put things so that the parallel structure works really well. That's parallel structure. And if you want to know some of the other structures that you could use, I have other videos on narrative, chronological narrative, non-chronological linear narrative, and circular narrative as well. So go check out those videos. The links will be in the description, and read them, listen to them all so you can figure out what type of narrative you'd like to use in your nonfiction book.